Okay, so this is the essay question. You always get it, and it's worth 16 marks, so you definitely want to be spending 20 minutes on it. Also, worth bearing in mind that there are 4 marks here for spelling and grammar, which, you know, think about paragraphs, think about full stops and capital letters, think about trying to use appropriate history words. That's the key thing there, good history words, propaganda, economic, those kind of words, alright? Now, it will always be a statement, as you can see here. You'll have a statement, and the statement is, in this case, the main reason for the military success of the Viet Cong was, so we know it's going to be about the military success of the Viet Cong, was the support of the Vietnamese people. Right. You must, this is my must, you must write about the cause or the consequence, whatever it is, in the statement. So in other words, you've got to talk about that. The question, the exam mark scheme is very clear about that. You've got to talk about why the support of the Vietnamese people helped the Viet Cong. Alright? So that, in other words, is going to be your factor number 1. You might want to start with it, you don't have to. In an ideal world, what are you trying to have? A short, and I emphasise that, introduction, which would give your point of view. In other words, do you agree or disagree with that statement? 2, the second thing is, you're trying to write about 2 to 3, in this case, causes, might be consequences, of which that one is 1. Alright? And then the last thing you may wish to do is some form of judgment at the end, maybe arguing the most important or showing how they link in some other way. Okay? So that is the basic structure, and it's the kind of thing we've been talking about in essays since, you know, forever, haven't we? Do you know what I mean? It's the same sort of thing. Now, the thing I just want to focus on briefly then is, well, what does the most of the marks, that is where most of the marks lie. Okay? It's in that bit there. It's in talking about 2 or 3 factors. So in other words, you would want to be able to talk about why the VC was popular. Well, you could talk about, I don't know, factors like they were good at propaganda, and you could also talk about the fact that being popular was useful because it meant they could travel lightly, they could hide with the village, the people who lived in the village, so they were hard to find. There's lots of stuff you could talk about, but what you need is a paragraph, a clear paragraph, using point evidence explained that focuses on that. So yes, the fact that another reason that the Viet Cong were successful was their tactics. You can't really answer this question without that, can you? So you would want to talk about, you know, what the guerrilla tactics were, for example. Punji traps, tunnels, all of that stuff, okay? You might want to talk about the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You might want to talk about the fact that, you know, the Americans didn't know where their enemy was. There's loads of stuff you could talk about there. You could talk about a third factor. For example, you could talk about US tactical weaknesses in the war, couldn't you? Okay, you could talk about the fact that, you know, their bombing made them unpopular, for example. Okay, you could talk about the fact that there was really low morale because of their inability to combat the guerrilla warfare correctly. So the point I'm trying to make here is not do your essay for you, but I'm trying to make you think about the fact that a little bit of planning, and think about it in terms of factors or causes. 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. That is where the bulk of your marks come. Okay, that's the thing to bear in mind. Now, if you can put a judgment at the end as well, and you could compare them and say which is the most important, absolutely fine. Okay, so for example, you could say that yes, I agree, it was the popularity of the Viet Cong which was most important, because if they weren't popular, their guerrilla tactics would have been much less effective, because the local people wouldn't have hidden them, and therefore the US could have responded with a much more conventional war. That's an argument, that's a judgment you could make. You don't have to agree with it, but it's one, but it's a comparison at the end, okay? So just very quickly, you must talk about what's in the statement. Try to talk about at least 2 other factors if you can, certainly 1. You might want to have a short introduction just with your point of view and a judgment at the end, but most of the marks lie in this bit here. That's the thing to bear in mind.